Hello, this is Will Schlecht from IronCrowAI, and today I'm going to be introducing you to our Office Action Response Shell automation tool called OA Shell. OA Shell is basically an automation pipeline which makes the initial process of preparing a shell or draft response to an Office action much faster. And the process to use OA shell is delineated in the instructions on the OA shell page itself. But essentially, the process consists of uploading an Office action, a claims file, which is going to be either a Word document of either the originally filed application or the immediately preceding Office action response. And the reason that this needs to be in docx is so that we can actually pull out the formatted claims. So instead of just getting the text, if you have different formatting, for example, if claims are bolded or claim terms are bolded, underlined, italicized, etc., which can often be the case, especially if you have, say, like mathematically heavy claims that might have variable names or sequence ID numbers or something. You'll want to have that formatting information. And then optionally, you can upload a custom template file, and that's a template for the response itself. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Once you've uploaded the two required documents and the optional template, you click Run and select which features you actually want computed. So OA Shell can produce several types of outputs. Everything's included in a kind of package, which will then be automatically downloaded. And that package gives you basically the materials that you need to start substantively drafting the response to the Office action. So that's basically the part of the process that OA Shell helps automate. So initially, I think traditionally, paralegals or maybe one attorney out of a team of attorneys will be tasked with the initial processing of Office actions to generate these Office action response shells, which then get kind of delegated to different practitioners to actually substantively respond to the issues raised in that Office action. And so OA Shell can make that process much easier. So we'll run through an example of this. We'll start by uploading an Office action and a claims file. In this case, we have a previous Office action response file that we'll upload. And we won't upload a customized template in this example. And we've got our two required files, so we can click Run. And this version of OA Shell, which I'm using, is the version that is kind of the standalone version. It doesn't include the LLM Sandbox specific features. So you can see that there are several features which are enabled by having both a subscription to OA Shell plus the LLM Sandbox. But what OA Shell can do as a standalone tool is generate the response shell, which we'll discuss, and then also download the cited references. So that's the prior art which is used in that Office action. So we will click Run, and it's going to process the Office action by basically extracting the text from the Office action and looking for each of the substantive issues raised. So rejections, objections, allowances, indications of allowable subject matter. And in addition to those substantive issues, it will also look for things like the examiner name and the confirmation number, art unit number, the OA date. So it's able to get all that information from those documents and pull it out. And the claims document, it's going to extract the claims and update them. So it's going to pull out the claims as they are, and then remove any markup notation, which might be in that previous set of claims. So for example, if you have a previous Office action response, and that's the claims file that you upload, you're probably going to have markup notation for any amendments that you made to your claims. So that's underline, strike through, bolding, etc. That will be cleaned up by OA Shell so that your claims are clean, free of markup notation, and ready for a further round of amendments if necessary. So OA Shell has come back with results. We can see that in addition to the kind of package that OA Shell automatically downloaded, we also have this OA summary. And this is just a nice graphical way to look at what each of the statuses are for the claim. So we can see that we've got one allowance for claim 8, a bunch of 103 rejections, no objections, no 101, 102, 112, or double patenting rejections. So we can kind of quickly see that we're going to have basically a lot of prior art that we have to deal with. We can see the kind of bibliographic information for this office action. We can see the examiner, the pending claims, the finality status. So this is a final rejection, the OA date. So just a nice way to see some of the relevant information for this office action at a glance. And then this chart shows the prior art, so the cited references, and it kind of helps you focus in on which prior art references are most important. You can see that in this case, the Salcudian 865 reference was used to reject, looks like about 13 claims, and it is the most kind of relied upon reference. So probably this combination of Perry and Salcudian are the references that most need to be focused on, with these other 4 references being kind of secondary references that probably are used to teach some particular aspects of the claims, but maybe not that important. So this basically gives you a quick way to see which references are very important. And also you can see it gives a breakdown by, we've got 4 distinct 103 rejections here, and it lists which claims are rejected in each of those. And for example, if you just want to focus on this first 103 rejection, you can see that's actually under only one reference. So it's probably one of those types of rejections where only one reference is used, but then the additional components that aren't explicitly taught by that reference would be obvious in light of maybe some other aspects of disclosure or just kind of general information that one of ordinary skill in the art would have. So let's look at the actual document that was downloaded. I think I'll need to change which screen I'm sharing as well, so that you're able to see this file. So this is the package that was downloaded. So you can see we've got the references. All the references were identified and downloaded. So if you want to look at this main reference, Salcudian, for example, you can open that up and look at it yourself. That definitely helps with increasing the kind of speed of response. You have the references at hand. And then we can also open the OA response draft. So this is the shell that gives the name to OA shell. And we can see we've got inventors, application number, the filing date, title. All this information was pulled from the office action and inserted into these locations, which happens to fit our OA shell template. So this is the template that we're using, and it's been, had all these different pieces of information filled in. And as I said before, you can customize these templates. So if you don't want to have the inventor name, or perhaps you want to have this information in a different order, you can make those kinds of changes, and OA shell will still work with those customized templates. We also have the correct mailing stop for this response, because this is a final rejection. And let's see, we've also got the office action date, which was extracted and inserted. So tons of information gets pulled out. It just makes this mechanical part of generating the shell a lot easier. Having to do this by hand, traditionally requires paralegal time or even attorney time. And it's just something that really should be automated. We've also got in our footer, the application number, filing date, docket number. These are all things which can be customized as well. We've got different sections for kind of boilerplate sections for making amendments to the specification. And here's a non-boilerplate section. So these are the cleaned claims that we have inserted. So you can see that this is kind of a test claim, just showing that you are able to retain kind of formatting of these different text style, so bolded or italicized text, that style will be retained. So I think this does a better job than some other existing tools at actually getting your claims exactly the way that they are previously presented in either the initial filed application or in a previous Office action response. And in addition to the claims, we will also have a remarks section where we've pulled out the indication of allowable subject matter and kind of reformatted that. And we've also got a section for all of the 103 rejections. So in this case, there weren't any 101 or 112 rejections, but if those types of rejections were also included in this Office action, they would be present in the produced shell. Our prior art reformatting is also, I think, pretty intelligent. So you can see that in this first 103 rejection, it's rejected under Salcudian and further in view of US patent application Perry. So the first time that a reference is mentioned, it will be given its full number. But then the next time it's mentioned, it will be referred to in shorthand. So we'll call it just Perry, for example. So let's see if we can find an example of that. Yeah, so Salcudian. And I think this one should have it. Yeah, Salcudian and Perry, and then a further view of Siegel. So the way that we reformat this basically is in keeping with the usual style that a human would reformat their claims. You're not going to refer to the full publication number with each recitation of that prior art reference, but you would maybe give it a shorthand name like Perry, the first named inventor, and then refer back to that reference using Perry. So the 103 and 102 rejection reformatting is pretty intelligent, and then will look basically like something that a paralegal would have generated by hand, but just being generated in a couple of seconds. And also, just as a sanity check, we include the exact section of the Office action which was used to generate this kind of reformatted 103 rejection. So that's what our shells look like, at least in this example. And you've seen that we can get the references. So let's take a look at what the default template looks like. This will give you an idea of kind of where OA shell is inserting information and how these OA response shells can be customized. So we can see that each of these blue flags is a location where OA shell can fill in information, and you can change the position of these flags. So for example, we could change in this kind of first table that we're populating, we could change the order or the types of information which are being shown. These flags can also occur within paragraphs, like this OA date, or even in the footer of the document. And then for the substantive issues, you can see we've got these different sections for each different type of substantive issue that could be raised, as well as some, deposit account information. And then these yellow sections are things which should be filled in manually, or which you could fill in yourself. So for example, just put my name here and save this as a kind of customized template. So by filling in this information, you don't have to fill it in every time. So we can now use this customized shell. So let's just do this again. So same Office action, same claims file, but now we can upload this customized template from our downloads. That's the template I just added my name to as the attorney, and run this again. And so now in this case, I won't have to fill in my name every time. And you can do this with as much or as little information as you want. You can have different customized templates for each practitioner at a firm, or you can fill in, different deposit account numbers. So once that's done processing, we can open this shell just to confirm that this reflects our customized template. Yeah, so we can see my name's there. So yeah, that's a quick example of how to use templates to save even a little bit more time. You can also insert your registration number, or really whatever information you want. That's the nice thing about having this flag-based kind of automation tool. As long as the flags follow the format that we've specified, they can occur pretty much anywhere within a docx file, from headers, footers, tables, paragraphs, and that will be correctly populated with the information pulled either from the office action or from the claims file, or potentially you can even pull in information from a previously filed response, which might have a higher probability of having that information in an easy to parse form. So for example, this could be a previously filed response. And if we gave this to OA shell, it would be able to extract the application number from this table here. And that's going to have a even higher probability of success and accuracy than if it was pulled from the office action document itself, because the office action is going to be a PDF, which requires some additional processing to actually get the text out of the PDF. So one final thing, I want to show the additional capabilities of OA shell if you have an LLM Sandbox subscription. So going into this account, which actually has an LLM Sandbox subscription, we can upload the office action and the previous response. But in this case, you'll see that we've got some additional features we can run. So in addition to just generating the response shell, we're also able to generate some substantive sections of that response. In this case, you can generate a traverse of a restriction requirement. You can kind of automatically include traversal language for those restriction requirements if your office action has a restriction. The downloading references is the same, but you can also generate an initial review and send all of the prior art, as well as the office action, the originally filed application, and the other associated documents to the LLM Sandbox. And that is a nice dovetail into using the LLM Sandbox to help generate a more substantive response to the office action. So besides just generating the shell, OA shell can actually kind of speed up and bootstrap itself into the LLM Sandbox to allow you to use that tool to then actually think of claim amendments, amend claims, etc. So we will run all of these. I think in this case, the PDF, the office action that we're working with doesn't have a restriction requirement, so we won't be able to show what those look like, but that's a pretty powerful tool. And if you get a lot of restriction requirements, maybe the art unit that you get your applications assigned to is one that really likes to issue restriction requirements, this can be a super valuable feature to have and save a lot of time. Of course, the more features that you run, it's going to take a little bit longer. But hopefully a little bit of additional processing time is worth it, since it can produce some really useful things. You can also produce an initial review. And so what that initial review is going to look like, I'll be able to show it to you, but essentially it will summarize each of the substantive issues raised in the office action, and it will go and find your application, the originally filed application for which this office action was issued, and the prior art, and summarize all of those as well. So we've got our summary dashboard, and let's open up our OA shell package. So we didn't download the references in this case, but we do have the response. I won't really look at the response because that's something we've already seen, but let's look at this initial review document. So it's not a initial review that maybe an attorney would generate, but it is a head start when it comes to responding to office actions. It starts with kind of helping you contextualize yourself to the case that you're working on by summarizing the subject application. So in this case, the subject application discloses a system and method for detecting surge in high pressure turbochargers of an engine, et cetera, et cetera. So subject application summary, and then it's going to be the first rejection summary. So the examiner, it's going to summarize the rationale that the examiner uses to support their rejection as well. So the examiner finds that Wang would teach a method for engine control that includes this list of features. However, Wang fails to explicitly teach using model turbocharger speed, and then uses an additional reference, I think, to support that. So summarizing in, the way that office actions are generally generated is a lot of boilerplate with the substantive parts, the real kind of meat of what the logic that the examiner is using to reject your claims, kind of dispersed throughout this fairly large rejection, which includes a lot of boilerplate. So I think what this tool is really able to do is find the substantive pieces of the rejections and just put that all in one place so that you can quickly see what are the critical arguments that the examiner is relying upon to make these rejections. And then it will follow that by a summary of the relevant references. So in this case, it's going to summarize the Wang reference. And it will do that for all of the rejections. So we've got a few different, I think, 103 rejections, and it will do that for each. It won't re-summarize every reference. So if I think Wang is used in multiple prior art rejections here, it's only going to summarize Wang once, because that's more efficient, and because usually the way that examiners use references is they have one particular reading of that reference onto a first set of claims, and then they use these additional references to kind of supplement for any deficiencies in that primary reference. And I think that's what's happening with the Takiyanagi reference. They're using this as a kind of a supplement to the Wang reference. Yep, continuing with another rejection summary. So that's what the initial reviews will include. And this applies to all of the different substantive issues that can be raised, including allowances, notices of allowability or allowable subject matter. That will also be summarized with any rationale for why that was made, restriction, requirements, formality, objections. It's not just rejections. So a pretty useful way to help you get started with your response. And yep, then you've got the response shell itself. So once you have kind of gotten the sense of what the rejection is about, how the references are used, you can start to come up with claim amendment ideas, or because we also selected to send this document to the LLM Sandbox, you can come over to the interrogation tab, and all of the references, as well as the office action, the originally filed application, and all of the cited references, as well as the claims document, so the previously filed response, and the OA response draft document. So this is the actual shell that was produced. So you can then use all of these documents in the interrogation window of the LLM Sandbox to help you generate an actual response. So to help you flesh out your claim amendment ideas, or to maybe you already have claim amendments, but you need to kind of finalize your remarks regarding those amendments and why those amendments overcome the rejections. So you can do those things here. I won't go into detail about that. I think you can find information about how to do that in the tutorials on the LLM Sandbox. But the OA shell is the fastest and best way to kind of get all of that information into the LLM Sandbox and accelerate your workflow to get a nice, very complete OA response finalized. So, yep, that's OA shell in a nutshell. And I think that's it for now. Yeah, maybe I'll do another demo on how to customize different templates and how to use that. But I think that gives you a good sense of what OA shell does. So thank you and talk to you again later.